8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
OK, here we go.
Hello, chums. Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin the continuing story of Top of the Pops.
Pop, pop, pop music. Pop, pop, pop music.
1979, the year in which Top of the Pops celebrated its 15th anniversary, its 800th edition, and was still the only pop show that mattered.
Your shiny mansion on the hill is to go and do Top of the Pops.
If you did Top of the Pops, you'd shoot up automatically 15 places.
Top of the Pops was like the holy grail.
And in 79, the range of styles on Top of the Pops was never greater. You had punk turning into new wave. Disco was on fire. Two-tone arrived with bands like Madness.
Even if I kept on running, I'd never get to Orange Street.
And that's not to mention reggae,
Money in my pocket, but I just can't get no love.
country. The list goes on. But in spite of the musical merry-go-round, a failing country was falling apart with endless strikes and conflict. And back at Top of the Pops, the cracks were starting to show. The programme was a little weary and hamstrung by working practices.
Show me a man in the union that goes for a living and I'm putting him out of work. I don't think so.
It was the end of the decade and the end of the line for 70s Top of the Pops. In 79, with only 3 channels, Top of the Pops broadcast on Thursday night on BBC One after Tomorrow's World.
Good evening.
And in November 79, Top of the Pops racked up its highest ever audience of 19 million viewers. But that might have had something to do with the fact ITV happened to be on strike. And that's how the whole year started.
We don't need no education.
The infamous winter of discontent, with the most working days lost since the general strike of 1926, stopping rubbish collection, closing railways, schools, hospitals, turning the country into a ghost town.
I'm hoping that common sense will prevail, that all those involved will think not only of themselves, but of the children who won't be able to go to school, and for the housewives who may find food supplies threatened in some way.
In Sedgefield, a gravedigger strike forced desperate measures.
It was Mrs. Mary Mason's dying wish to be buried near her husband. Her 2 sons crossed the picket lines and dug the grave themselves.
Of course, they threatened tanker drivers. Dispute now if that began to spread. And then, of course, we began to face problems in terms of fuel.
The government and unions were at war. Everybody felt it, including a family show band from Salford just entering the charts.
It was quite a stressful time because the early part of 79 we'd had the winter of discontent. I remember you had to plan your gigs out, knowing where you could go, where they would serve you petrol. And being in a successful band, you were very fortunate that the garages, you could phone a garage up and say, we're going to be coming in at 3 o'clock in the morning. Do you think you could save us some petrol? And they would.
I heard you on the wireless back in 52, lying awake intently tuning in on you. If I was young, it didn't stop you coming through.
The country may have been falling apart, but in the world of pop, business was booming.
Unbelievably, 1979 was the biggest year for single sales in the UK ever in recorded history.
And many of those 7-inch and newfangled 12-inch single sales were in the unstoppable genre of disco.
Well, it's Top of the Pops, and it's music, and it's chic. La freak!
One man who hit big in '79 with disco found the show's ties to light entertainment were unchanged since his first appearance as a backing musician some years earlier.
The first time we appeared on Top of the Pops, we were in a group called New York City. We were sort of like a one-hit wonder. We had a song called I'm Doing Fine Now. I'm doing fine now, without you, baby. We were doing, you know, seriously cool R&B, Philly sound. And then the chap who came on right after us, terrific. He came out and he went, there once was an ugly duckling.
There once was an ugly duckling with feathers on.
And like the whole crowd was like jamming with him. And we were like, whoa, it's the most interesting music show I've ever seen.
Nile Rodgers' Chic had 4 disco anthems on Top of the Pops in 1979, starting with signature tune Le Freak, which almost didn't make it onto the show.
When we played that record for the record company, true story, by the time that song ended, the entire conference room was empty because they were all outside trying to figure out how to tell us how much it stank. Do you want to know the biggest selling record in the history of Atlantic Records, which is the record company of Cream, Led Zeppelin, Crosby, Stills and Nash, all these huge acts, Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles, John Coltrane, Le Freak.
Just come on down to the 54. Find a spot out on the floor.
And in '79, Nile's funky hits weren't just with Chic. Our Man of the Year and his team were unstoppable and wrote hits for 3 other bands as well.
And we are going to have Sister Sledge, and he's the greatest dancer at number 6.
He's the greatest dancer that I've ever seen.
They had it. They absolutely had it. And they didn't just have it as a group. They had it to give and to share to other people.
I usually work with people, typically, to revive their careers or start their careers.
Here's Sheila B. Devotion. And
the year before, they'd been Sheila B. Devotion, horrible version of Singing in the Rain.
I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain.
And then you've got Spacer. What an absolutely incredible...
No matter how nasty people felt disco was, they couldn't say that the music that Nile Rodgers and Ben Edwards made was nasty.
But in '79, disco's hold on the charts was peaking, even for a jury of showbiz grand dames like Joan Collins, Elaine Page and Johnny Rotten.
I think we're oversaturated with disco. We're being pulverized by it. I think it should stop, and I think that it's time we found something very, very different.
The problem with 1979 is that as great as it was for us on Top of the Pops, it also was the year that was unfortunately the end, really, of Chic getting hit records. We never had a #1 record ever again. That's it.
From top 5 with Le Freak C'est Chic, Nile's gang was now fodder for novelty records, a collection of sheep noises set to a disco beat. And the lone punk on the jukebox jury panel was not amused.
Johnny Rotten.
Rubbish.
And the audience agree, so it's a miss all round.
Next, he set his sights on Top of the Pops.
This is Public Image Limited and Death Disco.
When we had Public Image in the studio, there was a lot of, oh gosh, we've got this edgy band in, are they going to behave themselves? Are they going to do something, you know, really shocking?
I've only found out over the years how nervous we made people
I think we pre-recorded. I don't think it was live because we were real spontaneous, really couldn't care less about offending people. In fact, probably hoped to.
There's almost like a contempt for the programme, really, in the fact that he's turning away from the audience, he's got the headphones on, but he understands there's a message that he wants to get out there.
Def Disco was Public Image's take on disco. So, you know, it had the dark aspect.
Maybe not everyone appreciated just how dark a sound that was because it was on Top of the Pops. The song that talks about rotting flowers and the death of his mother.
Personally, I was very kind of cheeky and leery, and when I got to the BBC, the first thing, where's makeup? I've got to go to makeup. I want my teeth blacked out. And a few people half-heartedly tried to talk me out of it. I wasn't having it. And I couldn't wait, you know, where's the camera? Here it comes. The whole thing normally about going on telly, obviously, is you want to look glamorous and look your best. And I thought it was a laugh to look really horrible. I think I had talked about having big spots put on my face, and I think I got talked out of that.
But one thing that upstart new wave bands often found is they made the show's producers reach for the slightly dated palette of special effects.
You've done your show, go back home, you've got to watch it. It's the ruts for Babylon's Burning, and then these kind of really cheap effect flames come up, and we're like, what? You know, really embarrassing, and your mate's kind of poking you.
But special effects couldn't disguise a punk iceberg heading straight for the good ship Top of the Pops. The show's crew of long-serving light entertainers were lined up in the sights of the young new wave generation.
It was such a mixed bag, Top of the Pops. I mean, you'd have on one show something like the Nolans. And then you'd have a punk band or a new wave-ish band, you know, sort of coming on. And it was surreal sometimes.
Ooh, so come on and hold me tight.
At the time, of course, we were kind of the cheesy Nolans. That was our image, and it was, you know, Irish sisters all singing in nice harmonies and dressed the same, and which was quite a difficult image to have because we were just normal girls. You know, we did get a stick from other bands, like punk bands. One in particular, I remember when we were doing I'm in the Mood for Dancing, the Skids were on.
My memory of Top of the Pops from that era is pretty miserable. I mean, it was the biggest show on television, no doubt about it. But it was always inhabited by the most moronic acts, the kind of acts that made you want to be in a punk band in the first place.
I don't know, maybe they were just trying to live up to their image, but as we passed their dressing room, going to our dressing room, they spat out in front of us on the floor.
If you think about the context of they were so miserably unhappy about being here, and it was like a kind of prison for us.
Of course, our record company was shepherding us on, and, you know, in effect, they had 4 mad Irish women who were going to chin them. But they got away with it that time.
In '79, another top 5 act from the world of working men's clubs, the Dooleys, found themselves on the same show as Larry punk rockers Generation X.
We arrived one sunny day at Television Centre, and there on the roof stood certain young members of Generation X, and they were all relieving themselves on the crowd down below. The commissionaires with their hats on were shouting out, "Oi, what do you think you're doing?" And back came the reply, "We're making a statement."
But it is possible Generation X were on the roof of TV Centre for another reason. In search of the BBC Club and Bar, a Shangri-La of subsidised cheap booze.
Most of the time it was just sitting in a dressing room, bored out of your brain, wondering when you can go to the BBC Bar.
But the hallowed walls of the BBC Club and Bar, untouched by human hand since its opening in 1960, were restricted to BBC Club members only.
Every band member, of course, rocked up to the BBC Bar, tried to go in and say, you know, I'm a friend of. And there was this huge, great big bloke on the door.
They had a commissionaire. They were ex-army sergeants, usually. White hat and uniform, would sign you in.
He had this massive, great old handled moustache.
Honest to God, the bribery that used to go on to these men to try and get into the BBC Bar.
He wasn't having it. He'd heard every story on the planet.
Yeah. Barry, just slight problem here.
A few studios along, in number 3, there's a new classic serial in rehearsal. This sort of production uses a great deal of scenery.
The social mix of the BBC Bar reflected a TV centre which, in '79, was in its bustling heyday, producing a vast array of programmes.
Lunchtime. And there are 4 canteens to choose from at the centre. Here, secretaries and sound engineers can mingle with cardinals and kings.
Yeah, the mix in the BBC Club afterwards was great because you'd see people who were coming off the sets of popular drama.
Oh, look, there's Soames from, you know, Forsyte Saga, or there'd be someone from Blue Peter, and there's Doctor Who over there.
Think of the thing which has frightened you most on Doctor Who recently. The chances are that it started life here.
Yes, can we please keep it quiet, studio? We're trying to camera rehearse. Come on now,
I remember going into the bar and I thought, this is a bit of me. It was a bit like the bar in Blade Runner. But it was all geezers dressed as aliens from the film set of Doctor Who, and they were cab drivers. So I'm at the bar with a geezer dressed as an alien, and it was a geezer from Bermondsey or something, as I recall, cab driver. Oh, you know, extra.
Good evening.
I do remember thinking, oh, these geezers are great. They're getting stuck in very early in the day, like me. So, yeah.
For a moment, everyone's kind of equal.
For once in my life.
I mean, I saw Mr. Tony Bennett.
I have someone who needs me.
You know, a bit of a fan. I like good singers, you know. No offence, Six. I like good singers. So anyway, I went and said, oh, hello, Mr. Bennett. I just wanted to say hello.
For once unafraid.
We spoke for about 10 minutes. He was very encouraging. He told me to follow my dream and carry on, work hard, and what a great thing it was to be able to do something you love for a living.
Pure class.
Pure class.
So, joining Tony Bennett at the BBC Bar in '79 are The Ruts, Madness, Legs & Co, Soames from Forsyte Saga, Jar Wobble, Aliens from Doctor Who, and this lot from Camberley.
Luckily, I had a friend who was filming the Aeneidin line in the next studio, and because of her, we were able to go to the BBC Bar afterwards.
I'll see you at the club.
There's one character who played this old captain, Captain Baines.
You're out of line, mister.
He was terrified that we were there initially because he thought, oh my God, you know, punk rockers, and he'd read all the tabloids and about how terrible we were.
You listen! Now, if you don't get those two off this ship, then we damn well will.
Suddenly they're these kind of suburban sort of middle-class boys being quite polite and being quite thrilled that they're in a cheap bar and not really wanting to do anything to get expelled from, you know, the holy grail of cheap booze.
61. Take up the bar then, Annie. Take up 65.
Alongside the members, as part of the new wave vanguard, the Top of the Pops studio was graced with a new emerging model of pop frontman.
Cue applause.
From Joe Jackson to Andy Partridge.
And now Elvis Costello.
The angry young nerd.
Elvis Costello always had a rather combative relationship with Top of the Pops, with television generally. He was the angry young man. I mean, you know, when asked what inspired him to write songs, like hate and revenge.
And Elvis's passion seeped out of every pore and luminous fabric of his cool nerd image.
There's a word I don't understand. I hear it every day from my old man. It may be cockney rhyme and slang, it ain't in no school book.
I remember 79 doing Gertrude. The producer came over and he said, oh, before you do it, he said, I'm glad you're doing the vocals live. He said, because there's a word I want you to cut out. What? Can you cut the word cow son out? And I remember saying to him, why? He went, my mother heard it on Radio 1 this morning, and she called me up and she's informed me that it's an old-fashioned Victorian swear word. So I'd be really happy if you can cut it out or substitute it for something else. And I remember talking to Dave, and we come up with a couple of other words beginning with F and C, but he didn't want to know about that.
He says it every time that he gets mad. A regular caution is my old dad. Well, the old man up the wrong way.
So we did it, and I remember having one more run through, and I accidentally said it. But stop. If you say that once more, he said, you're off the show.
Well, the old man up the wrong way. Bet you love your lyrics side.
And when we did the final take, I looked at Dave and my eyes sort of spun round.
When the paper boys off an hour late.
It was our mums and dads and our uncles and aunts and granddads. It was their words. They would say, you cow son, good you cow son. Yeah. Like Gertrude sort of went with it, you know, good you cow son.
This is what the ad is.
It's such an inoffensive word, isn't it, really?
Son of a cow.
Say anything, but don't say the C word. What's the C word? That's the C word, cow son.
Meanwhile, in the outside world, a certain someone was making a big impression.
Where there is doubt, may we bring faith, and where there is despair, may we bring hope.
Elected as Prime Minister in May '79, Margaret Thatcher soon identified her first enemy and was ready with a new broom.
What madness it is that winter after winter we have great set-piece battles in which the powerful unions do so much damage to the industries on which their members' living standards depend.
And in a parallel universe called Top of the Pops,
They call me the Iron Lady. Tell you I'm hard as nails.
in a microcosm of the conflict, the unions were fighting their corner.
I never forget my brother Frank, who played lead guitar, and we got up onto the stage to do our rehearsal.
Honey, I'm lost.
And because he played guitar, his microphone was in the wrong place. And he picked up the mic stand and moved it. And all of a sudden there was a walkout because, you know, an artist had taken somebody's job and moved a mic stand. It was that silly at times.
And in '79, American disco acts frequently brought their studio finesse songs to the show to find they wouldn't be backed by their own recording, sounding like this. But were obliged through musicians' union rules to play with the Top of the Pops orchestra, a staple of the show since 1964.
The Musicians' Union insisted that if there was an artist that had an orchestra on the track, they would have to work with the BBC orchestra.
I know we've got a long, long way to go, and where we'll end up, I don't know.
I was on the same show with McFadden and Whitehead. They were great, but the backing track wasn't wonderful. Because they're classically trained musicians, this is a bit wooden, a bit stiff. You know, when you're dealing with an orchestra, they're playing to what's on the sheet, and what's on the groove is not in the sheet.
In this world there's much confusion, and I've tasted the city life, and it's not for me.
At the time, in '79, I was working with the Jacksons.
How I do dream of distant places.
The problem there is that you've worked with the best, you know, the ultimate session bass player or the world-class session guitarist from LA. Suddenly I've got them on stage working with very competent musicians, but a brass section that would rather go to the bar and have a drink at lunchtime.
I want destiny. It's the place.
Joe Jackson, Jackson's father, was a stickler for everything being right.
Destiny.
I would get it in the ear. Judd, they haven't got the groove. Brass players are all over the place. The string players are slack. What could I say?
The story I'm about to tell you is one of the most extraordinary tales of our time. It's a story of change. Some say it's a change for the worse.
The Musicians' Union, for about a year or two, tried to ban me because they said I was putting proper musicians out of work. How offensive is that?
Here in my car, I feel safest of all. I can lock on my doors. It's the only way to live in cars.
A keyboard synthesizer can simulate everything from a harpsichord or violin to a full brass band. It is very exciting.
The thing is, if I had people that are doing like strings, you know, which a real person could have played, I'd have had some sympathy for what they were saying. I was making synthesizers go, you know, show me a man in the union that goes, for a living, and I'm putting him out of work. I don't think so. You know, to get banned by the union, which meant I couldn't have gone Top of the Pops. You know, they were trying to kill my career based on ignorance. I wasn't putting anyone out of work. There was nothing on my albums that I could have got a human being in to do.
In May '79, Gary debuted with his groundbreaking electro sound and an unforgettable look.
And I made it my record of the week on Radio 1, so I was really delighted that he got a Top of the Pop slot. And I was instantly drawn to them. I thought, this is a mesmerizing performer.
This guy bounces onto Top of the Pops for the very first time, and he decides, this is the way I'm going to play it.
He just did some little jerky movements and little head movements and looked a bit disinterested in life.
I noticed that, you know, Top of the Pops had a fairly kind of generic look. You know, the lighting, the way people performed, everyone would always be looking into the camera all the time, whatever they were doing, you know. Always loads of lights flashing off and on with different colours, everyone looked the same. And I wanted to do something that was different to that, but I didn't think they'd let me. I said to the people when I first got there, would it be all right if I didn't have any colours, if I just had white? And would it be okay if I had someone on the floor in front of me when the lights coming up, you know, to go to the shadows and things? And I just thought they'd tell me to piss off, basically. But they didn't, they were really lovely. Kind of grateful that somebody was actually interested.
So now I'm alone. Now I can think for myself about little deals and issues, things that I just don't understand.
I didn't smile because I was embarrassed about my teeth. When I've sort of grown into them now, but when I was younger, I thought these two front teeth here were like Bugs Bunny. I thought they were too big. And then you start reading reviews and newspaper cuttings about this sort of cold, androidy, new person on Top of the Pop, and you think, ah, hadn't intended that. It's just because I was embarrassed about my teeth.
An amazing sound in a band for the future. That's Tubeway Army. Great stuff.
While Gary Newman unleashed edgy electro-pop, 79 was also a breakthrough year for a style of music that came a little later to the party.
If you look at Top of the Pops year on year, you'd see the change in music. But to me, reggae music was always the same. It was that lovely, lazy drum pattern, that rhythm guitar, that beautiful singing. And it was all encapsulated in Top of the Pops.
Well, at long last, reggae seems to be making inroads in the charts, and at number 26 this week, here's Dennis Brown with Money in My Pocket.
Dennis Brown was a complete demigod on the reggae scene.
Money in my pocket, but I just can't get no love.
And Top of the Pops, you know, when a tune got in the top 10 in the black community, people were on the phone to each other. Are you watching Top of the Pops? What's his name's on? You know, da-da-da-da-da.
I'm praying for a girl to be my own. Sonia said she coming, but I don't believe a word.
Under the banner of reggae, there were lots of subgenre, and I remember one big selling song that appeared on Top of the Pops was Janet Kay, which was more of a lover's rock.
And here's a young lady with a great voice. She's Janet Kay, and this is Silly Games.
A surprise crossover hit from the British reggae charts, Janet Kay, aged 18, had never even performed in public.
I went on holiday with a friend of mine and we went to Holland, and it was the first time for me going away from home because I was still living at home. And while I was away, I got a phone call saying, you need to come back because you've got to do Top of the Pops. I'm like, Top of the Pops? I was a very shy person, so I didn't really know how I was going to actually do that, being so shy, because I'd never sing in front of anybody live. So my very first performance ever in front of a proper audience was live on TV in front of however many millions of people. I had no idea how to put myself together. So I wore this pink t-shirt that I knotted at the side that sort of looked a bit trendy. I've got to have sparkles, and I had this little black chiffon-y type scarf, and I kind of put it round my neck, and I thought, yeah, that kind of looks all right, that'll probably do. And then they said to me, Janet, we want you to mime. We don't actually want you to sing, we want you to mime. I was like, what's miming? I don't know how to mime. You know, supposing my mouth doesn't move the same as when I did the recording, I don't know how to do that. Can I just do it live? I think they were a little bit put out because most people mimed, I think.
Reggae's popularity didn't stop there, as new wave groups jumped on the bandwagon.
Bermuda in the Bahamas, Front Street, Hamilton. They're doing more than growing bananas. They got a tax dodge going on. Offshore banking business.
And in summer 79, one previously unknown band eclipsed all other reggae acts.
The beauty of those days, it was so innocent and so simple. You'd hear a song on the radio, and if you really liked it, you'd hope to see it on Top of the Pops. And that's all we had. It was as simple as that. And I remember hearing Roxanne on the radio and loving it, because it had this sort of reggae undertone about it. It was like a reggae tune. When I saw Sting,
Roxanne.
I think my mouth was open for 3 minutes. I think my sister and I were watching it going,
Days are over. You don't have to sell your body to the night. Roxanne.
he was blonde. I'd never seen a blonde person sing a reggae-ish tune before. I don't recollect that ever. I always thought black people sung reggae.
Hello, nice to be back with you once again on Top of the Pops, and here comes that brand new Top 30.
Top of the Pops was, of course, all about the singles chart. But around this time, some keen Guardian reporter types started suggesting all with the chart may not be hunky-dory.
This is where the hit parade is compiled, at the BMRB headquarters in Ealing. There are an unstated number of secret chart return shops around the country, and 450 of them are sampled each week for the album charts, 250 for the singles charts.
There were unscrupulous record companies that used to go out on Saturdays shopping.
Every time one of these shops sells a particular record or cassette, it's all recorded here in this distinctive BMRB Diary of Sales.
Of course, if you had a list of the shops, you used to get a team of people to go and buy 10 records in each shop.
It was very hush-hush, but everybody knew about it.
The BMRB claim that no one knows just how many shops are on the panel or which are being sampled in a particular week.
I helped buy Al Stewart's Year of the Cat into the charts by going round with a friend of mine in the car and buying singles with a list of the shops.
Every record company we've spoken to say they know exactly which shops are concerned, and they target their product accordingly.
The BPI, or the governing body of the record industry, did police it, and if there was any doubt, you know, a record could be lowered.
One of the best new singles, second highest new entry this week, The Members and the Sound of the Suburbs.
The Members really sounded the suburbs, and it really buzzed.
This is the sound, this is the sound of the suburbs.
You'd had NME, Melody Maker, Sounds, and we were in them almost every week. You know, we were this very hot band, and it fires up the charts. In the official charts, thought that it was being hyped by Virgin. So they dropped us one step, and then they realised they were wrong and put us straight back up the charts the following week.
The Members' hot debut single only notched one rung higher before falling out of the charts.
You start to drop in those days down the charts and people stop buying your records. It's just the way it was.
But in those days, if you couldn't buy or hype your record into the charts, there was another more time-honoured way of doing it.
Pluggers do a lot of legwork and a lot of fast talking.
Employ one of these toe-tapping Johnnies.
I like it.
Yeah, oh, good. It smells like a hit to me.
Yeah, record pluggers or promotion people were very important to the program because they'd be on it, the producer, the director, for days in advance trying to get their own acts on the program.
The record companies have no option but to keep plugging away. Getting on Top of the Pops is what matters, not how you get there.
At that time, if you did Top of the Pops, you'd shoot up automatically 15 places, and that was the whole game.
Out on the street, I was talking to a man. He said there's so much, but there's nothing, man, that I don't understand. You shouldn't worry, I said, that ain't no crime. 'Cause if you get it wrong, you'll get it right next time.
For a plugger trying to get their record on Top of the Pops, all efforts were focused on the day that next week's chart was published.
When the chart is compiled, it's phoned through to the BBC.
Good morning. Are you all ready? Right. 1-9.
We'd all congregate on the 6th floor of TV Centre, and all the pluggers gossiping away, my band's better than your band, this, that and the other. Quite a good camaraderie. We'd be waiting, and they'd be getting the results in there of what's come in the charts, new entries and everything else.
Can you guys come in now?
But eventually the doors would open. You'd walk in. Your track's gone in at number 38. Are the band available? If they're in America or Italy. Automatically you say, yes, they are, even if they're not. And then you go back to the office and panic and try and get the band over.
And is everything OK for them to come over and do Top of the Pops next week if we get high enough?
It is, they definitely are. They've got their bags packed and they'll be on the next Concorde coming over.
You're always trying to outdo somebody else in order to try and get somebody on the show. Oliver Smallman, who is another record executive, and myself, decided we wanted to see this producer who always got in very early, a guy called Phil Bishop. We devised a plan of going in there the night before, and I persuaded the guy on the gate that we were coming in to do a bit of maintenance at the Top of the Pops office. We were escorted up there, door was opened, we were left to our devices, which was to close the door, set up a tent, and sleep overnight. In the morning, we put these scout outfits on. We got our primer stove, we're now cooking beans and sausages. Phil came in and was like totally confused with what was happening. Anyway, we were trying to plug our little acts, and if memory serves me right, I didn't get my act on. I was very disappointed.
One budding young act getting noticed by pluggers at the time were a North London ska band, The Invaders, who had a family connection with Top of the Pops.
My mum was a AFM, which is an assistant floor manager. Everyone who wanted anything went to the AFM. From David Bowie to Bob Marley to everyone, they all, knew my mum.
In '79, The Invaders had news for Woody's mum. They'd changed their name.
She used to know all the pluggers, so once we'd made the decision to be called Madness, she excitedly told all her pluggers, and to a man, every one of them went, oh, what a shame. They were going to go so far.
Right, this is the original of one of the ones that we do.
Madness didn't need an older generation of pluggers and record execs housed in corporate towers. They signed to a young and very different kind of label, Two Tone, based in a small terraced house in Coventry.
Showing them around the office. Here we have the checkbooks, the receipts, the contracts. I think this is our Bernie Rhodes contract.
It was phenomenal, the music that they were producing. Out of really pokey studios, there were bits of wall falling off while they were recording the records.
Nice piece of mohair.
Those recordings were just astonishing.
It might have been chaotically run, but Two Tone Records soon had a roster of new ska bands all storming into the charts.
It was more than just music, it was a whole movement. There was something really, really incredible going on.
In November, all three bands on the Two Tone label made it extraordinarily onto the same Top of the Pops.
I put my baby on the radio. He played it all day. I go. He liked to dance to it down in the streets. He said he loved me, but he loved the beach.
8th of November 1979, Specials, Selector, Madness, all in one show.
One step
And that's known in two-tone circles as the two-tone Top of the Pops.
Like when groups come with a bit of a swag, I think Madness had that swag. They really were great Top of the Pops performers.
And of course they asked us to do the Nutty Train. But it's a bit difficult for me being the drummer, because I can't really take my kit with me. I think it turned into more like a conga.
And you know that Madness have arrived. Once they're doing that through a Top of the Pops audience, they're there to stay.
Top of the Pops for years have been looking like a girl. The Bowie effect was ridiculous. To even groups like Slade, all of a sudden, people were looking like my dad did in his wedding picture. Sharp suits, and I loved it. A lot of my mates used to come into school Loafers were massive, suede boogers, we used to call them. I remember just everyone was running on the spot, pork pie hats, and it was a great look.
It's funny, you know, you join a band and there's all these milestones, you know, make a record, get on John Peel. Your shiny mansion on the hill is to go and do Top of the Pops. And you get it, and you're so excited as a band. And I guess it probably ranks in the top 10 of biggest anticlimaxes in life.
The first thing I felt was disappointment, really, I think, because I've been watching it on this small box all my life, and then you get there, oh, God, is this what it's like? You know, I always remember that set they used to have with the arrow, you know, and I'd seen it 1,000 times. Of course, it's make-believe, you know, there's little sets.
In '79, these new wave types came face to face with BBC staff who hadn't changed their ways in decades. It was like being back at school.
You used to get people coming in saying, right, you're on in half an hour, and are you ready? Have you been to makeup? And have you... It's just...
Barry, what's my problem here?
I remember, you know, faceless voice for intercom. Right, can we do that again? You know, one of those.
Cue them, please.
Can you get off, you three? Can we have you two back?
There was a lot of feeling that he was superfluous to the actual programme. Oh, musicians, get them out the way. I need this camera. The camera's coming through here, you know. Clear off.
And there were strictly regulated volume levels.
And then you realise how quiet the playback is.
Oh, horrendous. I mean, it was a constant battle to get it pumped up.
They'd be very scrimpy, just a little bit.
Is it going to be sort of louder when you're filming? And yeah, not much.
But then he's got his drums. You know, you've got plastic hi-hats, 2 plastic cymbals, and pads on the drum. So it starts like...
He did.
Really like, oh, God, what we do?
You literally have to stop to kind of... Often you see people on Top of the Pops kind of go like that.
In those days, cameramen and soundmen were just on a rota. So one day they could be doing the Antiques Roadshow.
It's very dusty inside and slightly discoloured.
And the next day they could be doing Top of the Pops, and they would be like, oh, it's a bit loud. Can you turn it down a bit? You had to sort of force the performance out of yourself.
And to make sure bands didn't complain, Top of the Pops had its very own version of the naughty step.
There was this kind of like axe swinging over you, though, it felt. They'd record too many, and there was usually one act that didn't make it to the week. So one week, when we did something that I said...
Something that I said, was something that I said, something in my head.
They had this kind of punk wall behind us. And they put, you know, obviously the band Sham 69, but they put Sham 9. It was a sham. Gang of Four were on, so I think it was Andy Gill took his strings and took them all off and wrapped them around his, you know, that's to say. And they just filmed them, but then didn't put it on. It was that sort of very BBC thing of, if you're a little bit too out of line, you're not going to make it this week.
Back at the start of the decade, the Top of the Pops audience were a vital part of the show and seemed delighted to be there. By '79, the studio audience looked, well, lost.
There was this kind of small group of kids that they kind of shepherd around like sheep.
And they really treated them badly. The cameras would come at them and they really had to duck and get out of the way very, very quickly.
They'd push the crowd about, like herding them about.
It was just like living scenery.
Confused, we don't seem to know what we're doing. Like a blind man, spinning round in space.
They don't look all that happy. So they all got to come over here now and be happy around this band, and they probably don't like the band.
Sometimes I think the audience could look as if they're in a state of shock. There was always the thing of, if possible, please keep moving, please keep dancing, please look like you're having a good time. And try not to look at the monitors, but of course, who can resist that?
There's like this vibe of loads of people being in there. You know, you've got this huge round of applause, but if you look at the front of the stage, you'll see that those people aren't clapping at all. It's canned applause. You know, there are 20 kids in there.
This is Rosie, they are Legs and Company, and this is Michael Jackson, Off the Wall.
In December '79, with a lifeless studio audience, the producers took steps to address the problem.
The producer had sent a message down saying, you know, we want to use the audience and make sure they're participating and looking like they're having a really good time. 2 or 3 people took that slightly to the extreme. I remember there was one gentleman who had a bright red V-neck pullover on. And as the music started, he was getting really into it, clapping away and a little bit over the top, but warming up all the time, and it was getting more and more noticeable to this person behind us. And then, halfway through the routine, there were a couple of boys in the front, and one of them was getting so excited, completely over the top. And as Rosie came forward, we were all coming forward in a diagonal line, he just fell off the chair and couldn't get back up again. And for the whole routine, he'd obviously been told, stay there, don't move. And you can see his feet kicking up and socks and what have you. And I don't think he actually gets back up on the chair again for the rest of the routine.
Towards the end of the year, following the ITV strike, a technicians' dispute forced Top of the Pops into an even greater change of format, with presenters out of vision and reduced to voicing introductions to previously shot performances and videos.
Hit 5, The Police and Walking on the Moon. I Only Want to Be With You, in sound if not vision tonight. And now, a change in tempo. A surprise single release. It's come out from Pink Floyd. Another brick in the wall.
And in December, an ominous song made its way up the charts to be the last #1 of the decade.
We don't need no education.
Another brick in the wall seemed to spell out the need for widespread change.
We don't need no thought control.
It's such an era-defining song. It wasn't my music, but it was rammed. It was like a hammer, just banging on your head. You couldn't ignore that song.
In a sense, you could argue it was a single that presaged the 1980s. I mean, this is the future. And we know now Mrs. Thatcher came in and Greed is Good and all sorts of things. There's something in that Floyd record that almost seems to suggest that.
Top of the Pops would feel the wind of change too, as older gent producer Robin Nash would be replaced by a younger man with new ideas, Michael Hurl.
1979 is the last year of Top of the Pops, how it had been from the 60s right through the 70s. Michael was coming in and he knew what he had to do to keep that show evolving and to bring a new audience.
Within 6 months, the Top of the Pops orchestra would stop playing in the studio, the light entertainment lovies would start to diminish, Gary Newman, his synthesizer pals and a whole new pop generation would arrive. And the show for the studio audience and the performers would get a total makeover. This is where the new age of Top of the Pops begins.